My name is Finn O'Connell, and in the year 1888, when I was but 11 summers old, my world was not the bustling streets of New York or the dusty plains of the West, but the quiet, shadowed grounds surrounding St. Helena Convent. It wasn't a grand, imposing structure like those you might see in the city. No, St. Helena was nestled deep in the rolling hills of rural Massachusetts, a place where the air always smelled of pine and damp earth, and the loudest sounds were the rustle of leaves and the distant tolling of the convent bell. Our little village, mostly farmers and a few tradesmen, clung to the convent's skirts like lost lambs. For St. Helena was not just a place of worship. It was the heart of our community, offering schooling for the girls and charity for the poor. My ma worked as a laundress for the convent, her hands perpetually chapped from the lye soap and her back aching from lifting heavy, damp linens. My pa, God rest his soul, had been a stonemason, and he'd laid some of the very bricks that formed the convent's sturdy walls. So St. Helena was etched into the very fabric of my life. I knew its rhythms, its whispers, its secrets better than most. The convent was overseen by Mother Superior Agnes, a woman as old and unyielding as the granite hills themselves. She was a formidable figure, her face a web of wrinkles, her eyes, sharp and knowing, peering out from beneath the starched white wimple. She moved with a quiet authority, her rosary beads clinking softly as she walked, a sound that seemed to command silence wherever she went. The sisters, younger and more gentle, adored her, but the village folk held a reverence for her that bordered on fear. There were stories, whispered late at night by the fire, of Mother Superior Agnes's past, of a life before the convent that was as shrouded in mystery as the convent itself. Some said she'd been a lady of great wealth, others a fierce crusader for justice. Whatever the truth, she carried herself with a weight that suggested a history far heavier than her frail frame implied. My job, during the long summer months, was to help Ma carry the finished laundry back to the convent's drying rooms, and sometimes to assist the groundskeeper, old Mr. Silas, with tending the gardens. It was monotonous work, but it gave me access, a quiet observer status that allowed me to see things others might miss. The convent usually hummed with a predictable, pious rhythm. Prayers at dawn, chores, lessons for the girls, vespers at dusk, then a quiet early night. But that summer, a subtle discord began to creep into the harmony. It started with the sisters themselves. They seemed more withdrawn, their usual gentle, smiles replaced by a faint nervousness. They walked faster in the corridors, their eyes downcast, and their whispered conversations, which usually concerned the day's duties or the well-being of the villagers, now seemed to halt abruptly whenever Mother Superior Agnes appeared. I noticed Mother Superior Agnes herself undergoing a change. She became even more reclusive, spending long hours in her private chambers, which were in a secluded wing of the convent, rarely visited even by the other sisters. Her lamp would burn late into the night, casting a solitary glow against the dark, imposing walls of her wing. I'd see her sometimes, emerging from her chambers, her face drawn and pale, a strange, almost haunted look in her eyes. And the clinking of her rosary beads, once a comforting sound, now seemed to carry a sharper, more urgent rhythm, as if she were praying with a desperate hidden fervor. One sweltering afternoon, while I was helping Mr. Silas weed the rose garden, near the convent's older, less used cemetery, I heard a sound that chilled me. It was a faint, muffled sob coming from within the convent walls. It wasn't the sound of a child crying or a sister weeping in prayer. It was deeper, more desperate, full of a raw adult grief. It lasted only a moment, then was abruptly cut off, as if someone had clamped a hand over a mouth. Mr. Silas, bent over a rose bush, didn't seem to notice. I glanced at the nearest window, one that belonged to the secluded wing, Mother Superior Agnes's wing. It was open just a crack, letting out a sliver of that cloying, sickly sweet scent I sometimes noticed around her chambers, like withered lilies or old forgotten incense. The next day, Sister Mary Catherine was gone. Sister Mary Catherine was young, not much older than Sarah, with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. She was a favorite of the village children, always handing out sweets and patiently listening to their chatter. Her disappearance was sudden, unexplained. Mother Superior Agnes simply announced that Sister Mary Catherine had been called away on urgent family business and would not be returning. No one questioned it aloud. You didn't question Mother Superior Agnes, but the whispers began, hushed and anxious, in the village. No one had seen Sister Mary Catherine leave. No carriage had come to collect her. Her small personal belongings remained untouched in her cell. It was as if she had simply vanished into the thin Massachusetts air. My ma, usually so stoic, wrung her hands. "Urgent family business," she scoffed softly to Pa that night, her voice full of doubt. "She has no family left alive, bless her heart." She told me so herself. The disappearance cast a pall over the convent. The other sisters became even more withdrawn, their smiles rarer, their steps quicker. I saw them glance nervously at Mother Superior Agnes, their eyes holding a mixture of awe and something else, something I couldn't quite name, but it felt like fear. Then a week later, another sister vanished. Sister Agnes. Confusingly, she was named after the Mother Superior, a common practice for new novices. She was a quiet, timid girl, fresh from the city, still learning the rhythms of convent life. Her absence was announced with the same cold, dismissive tone by Mother Superior Agnes, called away to tend to a sick relative. Again, no one questioned it, but the pattern was now undeniable. Two sisters, gone without a trace, and only Mother Superior Agnes seemed unbothered. My young mind, though still prone to the fantastical tales of adventure books, could see the grim reality unfolding. This wasn't urgent family business. This was something darker, something hidden. I started watching Mother Superior Agnes with a new intensity. She seemed to move through the convent like a ghost. Her presence felt more than seen. And always, that faint, cloying scent, stronger now, seemed to emanate from her wing, especially at night when her lamp burned late. One evening, while carrying a basket of freshly laundered vestments through the darkened corridors, I heard a sound again. This time, it was a faint, rhythmic thump, like something heavy being moved, coming from the direction of Mother Superior Agnes's private chambers. It was followed by a soft, scraping noise, then silence. My heart hammered. I flattened myself against the cold stone wall, listening, but the sound didn't return. I knew, with the chilling certainty only a boy who sees what adults overlook can possess, that there was a dark secret buried within the silent walls of St. Helena Convent. And Mother Superior Agnes, with her unyielding gaze and her clinking rosary beads, was at the heart of it. The innocent disappearances of the sisters were no coincidence. They were part of a larger, more sinister pattern. The scent, the late-night lamp, the whispers, the muffled sob. They were all pieces of a puzzle that pointed to something truly terrible. And I, Finn O'Connell, was about to stumble deeper into the Mother Superior's dark secret. The thump and the scrape I heard that evening, followed by the abrupt silence, echoed in my mind for days. It was clear as the Massachusetts sky that Mother Superior Agnes was hiding something in her private chambers, and whatever it was connected to the vanishing sisters. My young imagination, fueled by fear and a growing sense of responsibility, conjured up all sorts of terrifying images. Hidden dungeons, secret passages, or something even stranger. But I knew one thing for certain. I had to find out. My access to the convent was limited. I could only go where my chores took me, the laundry rooms, the gardens, the occasional delivery to the kitchen. Mother Superior Agnes's wing was strictly off-limits to everyone, especially a boy like me. It was guarded not by locks, but by an unspoken rule, a palpable sense of forbiddance that kept everyone away. Yet that very forbiddance only strengthened my resolve. I began to pay closer attention to the convent's schedule, looking for an opportunity. The sisters had a strict routine of prayers and duties, but there was a brief window each afternoon, after the midday meal and before Vespers, when Mother Superior Agnes would retreat to the small private chapel adjacent to her chambers for a period of solitary contemplation. This was my chance. It was a Tuesday, a day when Ma had a mountain of particularly heavy linens to collect from the village, which meant she wouldn't be at the convent. I made sure to be there early, helping Mr. Silas with an endless pile of raked leaves near the convent's main entrance. I worked diligently, but my eyes were constantly on the clock in the bell tower. As the clock struck 2, I saw Mother Superior Agnes, her back ramrod straight, disappear into the chapel. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Mr. Silas," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I just remembered," Ma said. She needed some of those special pressing cloths from the dry room. "I should go get them." Old Silas, half dozing over his rake, just grunted. "Aye, Finn, go on then. Don't dawdle." With a nod, I dropped my rake and scurried inside, not towards the drying rooms, but towards the forbidden wing. The corridors were silent, filled only with the faint scent of beeswax and old wood. My footsteps seemed impossibly loud on the polished stone floors. The very air felt heavy, charged with a secret. I reached the door to Mother Superior Agnes's private chambers. It was a heavy, dark oak, unadorned and strangely solid. I tried the handle, my fingers trembling. Locked. Of course. My shoulders sagged with disappointment. All this planning, for nothing. But then I remembered something. Ma, in her endless gossip with Mrs. O'Malley from the bakery, had once mentioned that Mother Superior Agnes, being a creature of habit, often left a single, high window in her chambers slightly ajar during the warmer months, to air out the cloying scent of incense that perpetually clung to the room. It was a small detail, seemingly insignificant, but now it sparked a desperate hope. I looked up. The window was indeed high, far too high for me to reach, but directly beneath it, set into the wall, was a small, ornate stone ledge, part of the building's old decoration. And next to that, a drainage pipe, old and rusty, running vertically up the wall. It was a long shot, a dangerous one, but I had no other choice. I found an old rickety wooden crate from the storage room used for carrying provisions. It was heavy, but I dragged it to the outside of the convent wall, beneath the window. It barely gave me any height. I looked around. The courtyard was empty. No one was watching. With a surge of adrenaline, I scrambled onto the crate, my hands reaching for the stone ledge. It was cold and rough beneath my fingers. I pulled myself up, my muscles straining, my feet scrabbling for purchase on the rough-hewn stone wall. The rusty drainage pipe was my next target. I reached for it, testing its strength. It groaned slightly, but held. Slowly, painfully, I began to climb, pulling myself up the pipe, my feet finding purchase in the gaps between the stones. The ancient mortar crumbled slightly under my weight, and the pipe swayed precariously. One slip, and I'd fall to the hard ground below. But the thought of the vanished sisters, of the muffled sob I'd heard, propelled me upwards. Finally, my head was level with the window. It was indeed ajar, just a narrow gap. I pushed against it, and with a soft creak it opened slightly wider, enough for me to squeeze through. I paused, listening intently. The faint strains of the sisters' choir singing vespers drifted from the distant chapel. The sound was strangely comforting, but also a stark reminder of the little time I had. I swung my leg over the sill, twisting my body, and carefully slipped into Mother Superior Agnes's private chambers. I landed softly on a thick patterned rug, the faint thud of my boots muffled. The air in the room was heavy, still, and that sickly sweet scent I knew so well was overwhelmingly strong here, almost cloying, like 1,000 wilted flowers. It was the smell of something old, something hidden, something that clung to the very fabric of the room. The chambers were unlike any other room in the convent. They were sparsely furnished, almost Spartan, yet there was an opulence in the few pieces present. A dark, heavy wooden desk, an ornate high-backed chair, and a single, large, carved wardrobe that stood against one wall, its dark wood gleam, a dull sheen in the dim light. The window through which I had entered provided the only natural light, barely illuminating the room. My eyes immediately went to the wardrobe. It seemed too large, too heavy, too out of place in such a simple chamber. It was dark, almost black, with intricate carvings of vines and thorns spiraling up its sides. It felt like it was absorbing the light, rather than reflecting it. This was where the sound, the thump, and the scrape had come from. This was it. My heart hammered with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I approached the wardrobe cautiously, my hand reaching for its large, heavy brass handles. They were cold to the touch. I pulled. The doors were stiff, but with a grunt of effort, they slowly, ponderously swung open. What I saw inside was not clothes or linen or even books. The wardrobe was empty of shelves, hollowed out, and at the very back, almost completely hidden by the darkness, was a rough, uneven opening in the wall. It was a dark, narrow passage, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, leading into absolute blackness. And from its depths, though faint, I could just make out a continuation of that sickly, sweet scent, stronger now, almost suffocating. This wasn't just a secret passage. This felt like an abyss, a chill, colder than any. Winter wind ran through me. It was too dark, too silent. But I knew with the chilling certainty of a boy who had stumbled onto a terrible truth, that the disappearances of the sisters, the Mother Superior's strange behavior, and that cloying scent all led here. And I knew, with a dreadful clarity, that I was now faced with a choice: turn back or descend into the Mother Superior's dark secret. The gaping, dark opening at the back of the wardrobe beckoned, a silent, terrifying mouth. That sickly, sweet scent, stronger than ever, poured out of it, thick and cloying like overblown funeral lilies. It was the smell of something utterly stagnant, of life too long held captive. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to slam the wardrobe shut, to climb back out the window, and to never, ever look back. But the memory of Sister Mary Catherine's kind eyes, of timid Sister Agnes, of the muffled sob I'd heard, propelled me forward. I had to know. I had to see what Mother Superior Agnes was hiding. I reached into my pocket for my trusty flint and steel, a small comfort I always carried. With shaking hands, I struck them together, and a tiny spark leapt forth, catching on a scrap of dry cloth I had brought. A small, flickering flame bloomed, casting dancing shadows around me. It wasn't much, but it was enough to pierce the absolute blackness of the passage. The passage was narrow, just wide enough for me to squeeze through, and it sloped downwards, the rough-hewn stone walls slick with damp. The air grew colder with every step, and the scent intensified, becoming almost suffocating. The flame of my makeshift torch flickered wildly, threatening to extinguish itself in the heavy air. I pressed forward, my hand scraping against the rough stone, my heart hammering a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The passage seemed endless, a winding tunnel into the bowels of the earth. I imagined the sisters, perhaps led blindfolded or drugged, forced into this dark descent. What horrors had they faced? What screams had this passage muffled? My imagination, usually a source of comfort in its fantastical adventures, now became a tormentor, painting gruesome pictures in the shifting shadows. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, but was likely only a few minutes, the passage opened into a larger, circular chamber. The air here was even colder, and the sickly sweet scent was overwhelming, making me gag. My small torch struggled against the oppressive atmosphere, casting weak, dancing light around the space. The chamber was ancient, its walls made of rough-hewn stone, the ceiling lost in the shadows. In the center of the room, there was a shallow, circular basin carved directly into the stone floor. It was filled with a thick, dark liquid that shimmered faintly in the torchlight, like stagnant water. And floating in this liquid, partially submerged, were what looked like dozens of withered black rose petals. But they weren't just petals. As my eyes adjusted, a cold dread seized me. They were desiccated human fingers, tiny, shriveled, and dark, like dead insects. A choked gasp escaped my lips, and I stumbled back, my torch wavering dangerously. My stomach lurched, and I had to clamp a hand over my mouth to keep from retching. This was a nightmare. This was not just a dark secret. It was a horror beyond anything I could have imagined. This was not merely disappearance. This was a gruesome ritual. My eyes, wide with terror, scanned the rest of the chamber. Against one wall, partially hidden by a stack of old, moth-eaten religious tapestries, was a crude wooden table. On it lay a collection of bizarre and disturbing objects: rusted surgical tools, old glass vials containing dark, viscous liquids, a worn leather-bound book with strange symbols on its cover, and a few lengths of coarse rope. Next to the table, propped against the wall, was a crude, uncomfortable wooden chair with leather straps dangling from its arms and legs. This was a place of unspeakable acts. The chill in the air wasn't just from the underground dampness. It was the chill of pure, unadulterated evil. Mother Superior Agnes wasn't just hiding bodies. She was performing some unholy work. The sisters hadn't simply vanished. They had been brought here. And judging by the shriveled fingers in the basin, they hadn't left alive. My mind reeled. What was the purpose of this horror? The faded religious symbols carved into the chamber walls now seemed twisted, corrupted, hinting at something ancient and perverse. The book on the table, with its strange symbols, must hold the answers. This wasn't about charity or prayer. It was about something far, far older and infinitely more malevolent. As I stood there, frozen in horror, I heard a faint sound from the passage behind me. A soft scuff, a whisper of movement. My blood ran cold. Mother Superior Agnes. She was coming. Panic seized me, sharp and immediate. I couldn't be caught here. Not now, not after seeing this. She would know I knew, and I would become another shriveled finger in that grotesque basin. I extinguished my torch, plunging the chamber into almost complete darkness. Only the faintest glow from the opening of the passage where the Mother Superior was surely approaching. I scrambled frantically, desperately, looking for a place to hide. My eyes darted to the pile of dusty tapestries. It was my only chance. I squeezed behind them, pulling the heavy, musty fabric around me, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. The air was thick with dust and that cloying, sweet scent, making me want to cough, to sneeze, to do anything but remain silent. But I forced myself to hold my breath, to still my racing heart, listening to the agonizingly slow footsteps approaching. A faint light, much stronger than my tiny torch, began to illuminate the chamber, casting long, grotesque shadows. It was the glow of a lantern. And then, Mother Superior Agnes herself stepped into the chamber, her black habit blending almost seamlessly with the shadows. She moved with that quiet, gliding motion I knew so well, but now it seemed infused with a chilling purpose. Her face, illuminated by the lantern, was devoid of emotion, a mask of grim determination. She carried a small, tarnished silver cup in her hand. She walked directly to the stone basin, her back to my hiding place. I watched, my breath held captive in my lungs as she knelt beside the basin. She dipped the silver cup into the dark liquid, filling it. Then slowly, she raised the cup to her lips and drank. My eyes widened in silent horror. She was drinking the liquid filled with the remains of the vanished sisters. A wave of nausea, stronger than before, washed over me. This was beyond anything I could comprehend. It was a ritual of consumption, of assimilation. She wasn't just hiding their secret, she was literally taking them into herself. As she lowered the cup, she let out a long, shuddering sigh, a sound of profound relief, almost of pleasure. And then she spoke, her voice a low, raspy whisper that seemed to fill the silent chamber. The nourishment, it sustains me. The purity, it strengthens me. Soon the new vessel will be ready. Soon, St. Helena will truly flourish. My blood ran cold. New vessel? St. Helena would flourish? This wasn't about the convent's well-being in the way I understood it. This was about her, about something she drew from these horrific rituals. She wasn't just a dark secret. She was the architect of this monstrous perversion. She stood up, still with her back to me, and began to light several small, flickering candles around the basin, their dim glow adding to the eerie atmosphere. I knew I couldn't stay. I had to escape. To warn someone, anyone. But how could I explain this? How could a boy make anyone believe such a grotesque truth? The Mother Superior's dark secret was not just a hidden passage. It was a living, breathing horror, consuming the very life of St. Helena Convent. And I, Finn O'Connell, was trapped within its terrifying grasp. The Mother Superior's voice, a low, raspy whisper, still echoed in the terrifying darkness of the chamber. The nourishment, it sustains me. The purity, it strengthens me. Soon, the new vessel will be ready. Soon, St. Helena will truly flourish. My blood ran colder than the stone beneath me. New vessel? The thought of what that meant, combined with the grotesque ritual I had witnessed, made the nausea churn violently in my stomach. She wasn't just performing rituals. She was preparing for something that required the lives, the essence, of the sisters. I forced myself to remain utterly still, my breathing shallow, barely a whisper in the dusty air. Mother Superior Agnes moved with a chilling calm, her black habit rustling softly as she lit more candles around the basin, their flickering light casting macabre shadows of her figure against the ancient walls. The shriveled fingers in the basin seemed to writhe in the dancing light, a silent testament to the horror. I could feel her presence, so close, so terrifyingly close, that I could almost feel the cold emanating from her, a chill that had nothing to do with the subterranean damp. After lighting the candles, she remained kneeling for a long moment, her head bowed, as if in prayer. But it was not a prayer to God. It was a dark devotion to whatever unholy power fueled her. The clinking of her rosary beads, once a familiar sound of piety, now sounded like the rattle of bones. I strained to hear, to understand, if she would speak more, reveal another chilling fragment of her twisted purpose. But she only breathed deeply, a long, drawn-out sigh of apparent satisfaction. Then she rose, her movements fluid and silent, and turned towards the crude wooden table. My heart pounded so hard I thought she must surely hear it. She picked up the worn, leather-bound book, its cover adorned with those strange, corrupted symbols. Her fingers, long and thin, traced the symbols with a reverence that turned my stomach. She opened it, turning pages with practiced ease, her eyes scanning the faded script. I wished desperately that I could read it, understand the source of this monstrous power. She closed the book, setting it gently back on the table. Then she picked up one of the rusted surgical tools, a long, thin blade that glinted wickedly in the candlelight. My eyes darted to the wooden chair with the leather straps. Was she going to— No, she couldn't. My mind screamed in silent protest. Instead, she merely cleaned the blade meticulously with a piece of cloth, her movements precise and deliberate. It was terrifying in its normalcy. As if preparing instruments of torture was as routine as preparing a meal. She then placed the tool back on the table, picked up a vial of the viscous, dark liquid, and carried it back to the basin. She poured a few drops into the murky liquid, and it shimmered, almost pulsed, as if coming alive. A faint, almost imperceptible gurgle rose from the depths of the basin. The sounds, though faint, were enough. I couldn't stay here any longer. The air was too thick with that awful scent, the darkness too alive with her evil. I had seen enough, more than enough. The sheer monstrousness of it was overwhelming. I had to escape. I waited, rigid with fear, for her to turn her back again. When she bent over the basin, her attention fixed on the shimmering liquid, I moved. Slowly, silently, I began to inch backward, deeper into the shadows behind the tapestries, towards the narrow passage I had come through. Every rustle of the coarse fabric, every faint creak of my hidden limbs felt like a thunderclap in the oppressive silence. It felt like an eternity, but I finally reached the mouth of the passage. I risked a quick glance back. Mother Superior. Agnes was still by the basin, murmuring something unintelligible to the shimmering liquid, her back still to me. This was my chance. I slipped into the narrow passage, not bothering to light my flint and steel. The darkness was absolute, suffocating. But it was a familiar darkness, less terrifying than the horror I had just witnessed. I scrambled upwards, my hands and knees scraping against the rough stone. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I pressed on, adrenaline surging through my veins. The cloying scent slowly began to fade as I ascended, replaced by the fresher, albeit still damp, air of the upper convent corridors. Finally, I reached the opening at the back of the wardrobe. My muscles screamed in protest, but I pushed myself through, emerging into the cold, silent sanctity of Mother Superior Agnes's private chambers. I was drenched in sweat, my clothes clinging uncomfortably, and I tasted bile in my mouth. I didn't waste a second. I pulled the heavy wardrobe doors shut, the solid thud reverberating through the room, as if sealing away the nightmare I had just witnessed. I then went to the high window, carefully swung it open, and slipped out, reversing my earlier climb. Descending the rusty drainage pipe was easier this time, propelled by the sheer need to escape. My feet hit the ground with a jarring thud, but I barely felt it. I didn't even bother to close the wooden crate. I simply ran. I ran through the convent grounds, not caring if Mr. Silas saw me, not caring if a sister heard my frantic footsteps. I burst out of the convent gates and didn't stop until I reached the familiar dirt path leading to our farm. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the fear was a relentless whip at my heels. When I finally stumbled through our door, Ma was there, lighting the lamp for supper. She looked up, her face creasing with worry. "Finn, where have you been? You're pale as a ghost, and you're soaking wet!" I collapsed onto the wooden bench by the table, shaking uncontrollably. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come, choked by the images burned into my mind, the shriveled fingers, the dark liquid, Mother Superior Agnes drinking from the cup, her chilling whisper about a new vessel. Ma knelt beside me, her hand on my forehead. "Finn, speak to me. What happened?" How could I tell her? How could I tell anyone what I had seen? They would think I was mad. They would think I had dreamed it. And what if Mother Superior Agnes knew I had been there? What if she came for me? For us? The thought of her cold, emotionless face, her quiet, gliding movements, made me tremble anew. The convent, once a symbol of peace and charity, was now a place of unspeakable horror. The Mother Superior, a figure of respect and reverence, was a monster. The disappearances of the sisters were not a mystery, they were a sacrifice. And I, Finn O'Connell, a boy of 11, carried the terrible, unbelievable truth of St. Helena Convent. My small world had been shattered, revealing a darkness I never knew existed, and I was now faced with the impossible task of somehow, some way, stopping it.